Well, I'm Juan Archila from Georgia Tech, from Facilities Design and Construction, and I wanted to just present real quick just our BIM execution plan template, and then just go through the first example of a template that has been filled out. It's kind of a pioneer team. This template came out in September 2011, and we haven't really had a project to really implement this until the Engineered Biosystems Building, the EBB project, which is McCarthy and Cooper Carey. They started working on that, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months after this came out, so that's kind of been the first one to go through it. And us kind of diving in at first with it, I'm not sure comparatively how it really compares to other universities or other BIM execution plans. So feel free to jump in and comment if anything looks kind of weird or different or better or worse than anything that you guys have gone through. I think in the last meeting that I attended, I guess I missed the last meeting, but 2 meetings ago, we talked about who the BIM execution plan is for. And I think obviously this is for us. This is for Georgia Tech to see what the team is doing and how they're going to do it. But I believe that each individual team has their own. I think I remember Cooper Carey talking about having one for themselves the way they work. But we, in this template, asked certain things just for us to know. There may be more detailed things that we don't know that we don't necessarily want to dictate. So I was hoping that I could just advance it like this, like a, oh, I guess it's click. Okay, click. That works better. So here's the table of contents. We divided it up into, I guess, 8 sections, where we first have the overview, and we just list the team from every party, I guess, like designers and the construction side. And then there's the modeling plan that then's broken up between the phases. And then a plan for analysis, how this model is being used for analysis, and then how the class detection process works. And then process-wise, how modeling works concurrently between the architect and the contractor.
So did you mention at the beginning when and who you hand this out to? Do you have a set of rules as far as, and then how do you mandate it, or do you even put it required as part of your contract or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, it's required as part of the contract. So at the very beginning of the project, we actually have this up on our website for anyone to see now. It's a PDF file of our BIM standards, or I guess BIM requirements, and then also the BIM execution plan template is online. And I think we also have the COBE spreadsheet, like what things we want to see there as well.
So any BIM project that comes to Georgia Tech, you hand them this document and say, contractually you're obligated to kind of follow this?
Yeah, but actually it's not. We're not really. As you'll see, it's just the template that it has to be filled out. And we've already gone through with Cooper Carey and McCarthy. There's some things that didn't apply, or they wanted to answer it a different way. Or they had supplementary documents that say just see this document, and that's kind of how we've been going through it.
So does that mean you have to fill it out before you start the job? Because otherwise you wouldn't know what's in it to sign on the document.
Ideally, and then that's another thing. We didn't get one, like a true, the one that I'm going to show, we didn't get it until maybe towards the end of schematic design. It was kind of on the fly. I think everybody, including the design team and us, had just kind of a learning curve as to how it was going to go. In our first draft, I remember there was a lot of stuff that said to be determined. It's like, wait, we're trying to plan it out now. Like, let's not say to be determined too much on a lot of things. So this is just the first sheet. The ideal scenario, which happened, we had a few meetings with everybody at the table trying to hammer this out. Sometimes Georgia Tech wasn't there, but I think I kicked it off and we were there. But then there were separate meetings just between the architect and their people and the contractor and their people. But we encouraged, hey, everybody be together to work on this, and that's what ended up happening. So the template, a lot of it is cheat sheet notes, in red that's kind of a little bit of instructions on how to fill this out if there's any questions. And you'll see the filled out version in a minute. Then, sorry, if I can go back. Oh, oh, there you go. All right, nice. Then there's the coordination plan here, where by phase, I think we kind of did this in our note cards a little bit, like who was doing what by phase. That kind of gets filled out in this template as well. These milestone dates, these are all our best guess, and this is kind of determined by our process at first. When we put out the RFP for this project, we had a schedule in mind that we could tell the teams what that schedule is in terms of kind of the end date. Can you go back a couple? No.
That's just a list of the deliverables, I'm guessing? It just doesn't have a title on it.
Oh, yeah. It's right here, 2.4. Briefly describe roles and responsibilities from each stakeholder. Yeah, it just got cut off. It would have been better in the template if this just gets shoved down to the next page. But and I think that might be the way that it was done in the actual deliverable. And I think the way they filled this out, we had a Word file that we just sent to the team that they just filled it up this way. Then a lot of this, the stuff that's not in red, is boilerplate. Like we're just saying, this is, kind of defining what needs to be done. And that could also have been changed if the team had, issues with wording or things like that. So then we defined who the model manager was on each team. And this was planned models, who was going to do what kind of model and in what authoring tool. And then this that's filled out in red is just an example. There may not be some of these models depending on the project. I think another section down here said something about like kitchen equipment or something like that, and this project doesn't have that, but at first they kind of kept it in there and said NA, NA, or something, but it's like, well, you don't have to say exactly what is here. This was just the way that it, this is an example of it being filled out. Food service, that's what it was, I remember. So then the file naming structure, we define everything. What things are being dimensioned, how precise the dimensions are. And then we get into our COBE requirement, what's going to be there, and I think that's a separate document, an appendix that people add on to that. I know this is also kind of supplementary. It's the modeling level of detail. In the one that I'm going to show you, the ECO2 was attached with everything filled out by attribute. And then this is pretty much open to however the teams are going to execute this by phase.
When you mentioned the E202, have you guys, the 203, is it the 203 that's out for comment at the moment? I believe it's the 203. It's the updated 202. Has anyone heard when that's going to be finalized? I saw a copy of it 6 months ago and read through it. Had like a date of comment on it, so it wasn't
different than 202.
It's more detailed. It's more detailed, a lot better than the sort of the vague 202 was, but it's just out for comment, I think, at the moment. So there's no response to that.
No, I've not seen an E203 yet.
If I can find it, I think I've got it saved. I'll email that to or post it on LinkedIn, whatever makes most sense.
Well, we've got the new website now,
Yeah,
so
we'll
be able to upload that to the website.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be nice. Yeah, because right now in our BIM standards, we reference E202 still as well.
Well, yeah, that's the current. It's just,
yeah.
And then again, just anything that might apply, construction capture, collaboration plan, document management, what tools will be used to view different files, open up different files, and sharing. Okay, so that's it. Were there any comments or questions about that? Was there something, a glaring omission or something extra that's like, wow, we've never had to really do that? Or and Raul, you mentioned that you use the standard like based on Indiana University.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can, off the top of your head, think, does that seem kind of in line with the
Yeah, it does. It actually does. We have to strip down for evaluation purposes a whole bunch of it. But it has, unfortunately, for consultant engineers, the BIM execution plan does not fall on us for the project. It usually comes from the owner or from the architect. So we have ours. It's kind of like somebody may want to use it for it's a project execution plan, more like a directory on steroids and with a calendar on it. But it's there. Actually, we've decided that we want to revisit that this year and come back. And I told them, okay, hold on, because that's what we're doing at the round table, trying to standardize. So when we do come together, we present and we're all in the know. Okay, this is based on a document that's common to more than just one company. So.
Yeah, what's nice about the one for this one that I'm going to show you, the EBB project, I attended a couple of those meetings when they started talking about this, and not only was Cooper Carey and McCarthy at the table, but also the structural engineer and the MEP was in there, but nobody else with the contractor. So it was just the GC and then the consultants to the architect and the architect.
And that is one of the things that I would like to see. I was excited about the exercise we were doing, about the deliverables and everything else, because in architecture, with the pure architectural part of it, combined with the structure, is kind of simple and very, not simple, but it's very straightforward.
Right.
But when you start talking about interior design, you start with interior design and everything all detailed, and then you go to lighting design and all the rest of the equipment and everything goes with it. If you're doing it in BIM, if you're doing it in Revit, that starts to get really, really, really complicated. It's very useful to have a conversation with the subs. We've worked with Cleveland before, and they are using Revit all throughout. They put together their packages and everything using Revit objects, families. And unfortunately, when I'm sure that people have a meeting to start fleshing out the BIM execution plan, they are not bringing the subs along. And there's a lot to be determined and time saved by having those conversations early.
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen in other, I think maybe it's either Indiana or the Penn State template, I've seen sections where they kind of have this comprehensive, what do you want to use the model for? There's a whole list of things, visualization, energy analysis, coordinated documents. Some of them are just completely obvious, but some of them are optional things, and listing them all out, right in front of you, and then the owner kind of, the owner's mandating, yeah, we're going to use the model for visualization. I want to do energy analysis. All that's listed in there, and then maybe there might have been a column next to it on like who's going to do this.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's going to be in this one that you'll see. So, all right, and then move on to the example that was used. This was schematic design, and they're currently in construction documents now. So I believe they turned in a DD one, but I haven't seen it. But I thought it was good just to show this one because it was their first stab. The DD one would just be, because we require one at every phase, but it's just an update to it. So some of the things might have changed. There were a couple of things that it still said to be determined in schematic design, but that was kind of tightened up a little bit better. There was a scanned sheet where everybody signed this, but I, and after all this, they still didn't sign, but I did see it. And so here it is again. The project is defined, and then here's all the contact information from the core team. I tried hard to be on the core team, but apparently not. Obviously, not on this now. And then some of the things I remember, people saying, well, it's kind of obvious, the goal is to provide facilities management with a useful BIM model that can assist in future innovations in space management. It's achieved if the model is accurate. I mean, they just, I remember they were like, well, what do we say there? Well, so it sounds kind of obvious and dumb, but, and this is stuff that I've talked about in this format, I think, a couple times, is that we, Georgia Tech, used the BIM in different ways. The BIM model is for people like me, like an in-house architect that will use it for future innovations. But then we also would use the information from the COVID data to import it straight to our FM system. So these two things are related. I mean, it's extracted from the BIM model, but it's a completely different department at Tech that uses that information. But it's something we require.
Are you extracting the COVID data just from the Revit models, or from the Revit models and other documents?
From the Revit model, I think it gets imported directly to an Excel spreadsheet, and then that gets imported to the facilities management software. And I think we haven't actually done it all the way yet. We've tested it on smaller projects. But I think this one, pretty soon, we're trying to do a test of import to see how it looks. Because we're pretty confident that it will, but this is, like I say, these are kind of the pioneers of this whole thing right now.
Are you guys requiring a specific party to update the Revit model and all the facility management information, or is that decided by the team?
Right now, we're after they turn it over to us and we update things later. We think
the Revit model from the design team isn't going to have very much useful information for you facility side.
right.
So from the subcontractor models, basically the information that's housed needs to get put in the Revit model somehow.
Yes. And that's something that was asked early on, and it was we got an ad service for Cooper Carey to take that information back into the model and then have how it.
That'll be another topic of discussion for one of the future meetings. I think I've talked to a few of you about the shared parameter systems and incorporating that early on in the process with everybody before that way, so by the time it does get to him, most of that information is already there, and it saves, especially the architects, a lot of time and having to go back and, architects, us, the GCs, because there's some of that information that as a GC we're going to be putting in, not the architect, not the sub. So it saves everybody a lot of time, and in the end, the owner gets the positive result. But like I said, we'll have that as a discussion for one of the future meetings, and I'll show you the shared parameter. I found this nice little shared parameter manager plug-in for Revit that allows you to do batch shared parameters, like one-touch button type system, and it's really nice. It's actually on the website. I put that up.
It out. All right, okay, that's
yeah.
where I saw
Yeah.
it.
You can basically go in, type in all your parameters that you need into an Excel spreadsheet, save that out as a text file, and then when you go into Revit, you just hit the dialog box, tell it this is going to be it, and it applies all those parameters to each family, or to the family that you have open at the time. It's still somewhat tedious, but it's better than going into one family and then creating a parameter and then saving it and then creating another parameter and creating another parameter and doing that 4 or 5 times for each individual family as opposed to one process for each family.
That would be extremely helpful for us.
Yeah, especially you guys.
Well, on the mechanical end, we have a lot of one-offs on the rooftop units, and the amount of parameters that go into those is huge. And when you've seen the schedules, especially the mechanical equipment connection schedule on the electrical side, it's got like 5, 6, however many. The problem is bringing in from from the manufacturer content, it's like, yeah, but this is not scheduling, so we had to add one by one by one by one. And
Whereas,
yeah, that would be extremely helpful for us.
and you'll get to see that one. It's actually the first example I put up on the website on our I guess did I call that one the knowledge tab or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
I haven't seen the website.
Oh, I know. I sent that out to Jason for just kind of, I was going to unveil it here today to start getting feedback from everybody before I actually make it live. I mean, although technically it already is. So yeah. Anyways.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I didn't say it, but a lot of presenters do say that at the beginning. I intend for this to be not formal, and you can jump in whenever you like. But yeah, it's just like that. I believe this is a discussion, and I wanted to get feedback from you guys in case this was way out of the norm, or if this is kind of expected. Everything was kind of what you expect to see. Because like I say, this is the first one, so we're trying to dive in correctly.
Those project goals. It's funny you have those two up, and you said before the first one's kind of lofty and overarching. And I know in past projects when we've had kickoff meetings, we've divided it into two sections that are really kind of overarching goals that really establish the experience and commitment from all the parties at the table to the Revit, to BIM, or whatever. And so those are nice to have just in your kickoff meeting or something, but they don't really serve the purpose of that. And then there's kind of a separate section of things that are actual goals that people want to get or require, which is kind of your second one, like, we really need your data.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But we've divided those in past.
We have multiple sections for one for construction, architecture, and owner.
Yes. Right.
All specifically called out differently because there's different goals, and something that I might want as a contractor might affect design a lot. I mean, they may have to model quite a different way than they're used to make make it so that I can meet my goal, and they need to know that. So we supply all those goals from all the parties.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, we need to know if you're wanting to use the model for the quantities, especially if it's like concrete job. We'll definitely want to know that ahead of time so that we're aware of that as a structural engineer, that you're going to be using it. Concrete especially. Steel you're going to model that pretty accurately anyway. With concrete, you have to jump through some hoops and Revit to get it as accurate as you need it to be for quantity.
Which kind of goes back to our ins and outs. XMI.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Hey, you said you have a BIM execution plan for every phase that kind of builds off of the last one. What happens if you have a conflict in the updated one that maybe conflicts something in the previous phase?
Well, actually, the way we say it is that this is a living document, so it's not that it would be a whole nother plan, but we just update that plan at every milestone in case something did change. But if it's all the same in DD, maybe that's why I didn't see a DD one, because they just might have said this is still the plan. There's no changes for now. Yeah.
So the good thing is if you do have it like that for versions, you can compare, you can evaluate the design process.
I think you
by
want to track
going
the
back,
changes on that
tracking
document.
all the changes. I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing it like that. I think we should all actually take that into consideration.
No,
Every time we
I
reach a
agree.
milestone, save the BIM execution
Yeah,
plan.
we all have to agree on it again. The
Right.
next phase.
Right.
If anything, so we keep revisiting these things.
This is only during design, right?
Actually, it would be
Does
during.
it continue all the way through construction at certain milestones?
Oh yeah, I think so. But
Yeah, that one's a little fuzzier right now. We're not really sure what those milestones will be. I know that there's going to be, it's an accelerated construction schedule, so there'll be like separate packages that will be released and this and that. So, yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if that has been formalized yet when during construction.
We talked earlier about bringing the subs in and getting them involved. Well, a lot of times the subs aren't going to be on board yet. We're not going to know who they are until way later. So when they are on board, then we bring them up to speed and make adjustments to the plan
Right.
At that point, it could be resubmitted, I don't.
Yep.
And then with sub-input throughout the project, you know, there might be some changes done on, I don't know what those milestones would be.
I've seen that's why we have that whole exercise with the cards, all the inputs and outputs. I've seen that it does help significantly when you have the subs involved early on, because there are a lot of design decisions that can make that the subs can contribute something, a lot of value to those decisions. And we just,
Yeah, there's no doubt. More than just the BIM plan, I mean, the design in general, they have a lot. But
Right.
like I said, they're not going to maybe be on board. Contractors a lot of times aren't even on board. So,
no,
and that's the hard input you get early on in the design.
I feel like we're going to start seeing more contractors are on board in the beginning, and then I think eventually that will lead to subs being on in the beginning, hopefully. But now I'm starting to see more and more contractors there right at the beginning of the project.
It's the push for lean. Early involvement is a big part of it. It's a big one. It's a strategy.
Makes a lot of sense. We doing work,
You should be able to hear that's pretty sensitive.
And that's not lean at all. and that's why we were interested in manufacturing for mechanical. Unfortunately, Scott hasn't been here for a while, but Autodesk bought and purchased manufacturing software. But our model at this point from Revit doesn't do anything. They actually have to remodel all the sheet metal, and that's the part that we would like to have. Of course.
Well, at what point does the liability shift, or is there a question of liability of them taking your model from design and just fabricating based off of that? Because I could just see, a Ted Knocker putting the blame back on the design team for saying, well, this is what they gave me, versus how we do it now with them remodeling everything.
A lot of times there's a disclaimer on from designers or engineers from the stuff that they send that it's not used for that.
Right.
And the design team is not going to be responsible for it.
So essentially, they're still going to have to remodel it.
No, I don't think so.
No.
They just check it.
Yeah, check it.
Yeah.
Verify, make
And
sure.
a lot of times the design changes quite a bit from what, mechanically, duct drawings and stuff like that when we get to repeaters and that.
Yep.
So, a lot of times they are modeling a lot of it on their own anyway.
Yeah. And then VAVs and, just getting into
No,
the weeds of it, because that's what they're going to need on their side.
But this is the thing with the energy modeling from the beginning throughout first couple of years of utilization. It's very important that on the mechanical and the mechanical design, it's followed. It's an intent, and a lot of work goes into the calculations of how to treat or how to maintain the climate inside a space. So if we specify a VAV box with so many horsepower generating so many BTUs and letting loose so many CFMs into a zone, that's what needs to go in.
Right.
I mean,
and then you're going to show that in your model?
That is scheduled. You get a VAV box schedule in every project, because it not only does it get, because you have an architecture like or equivalent in the specs or approved equivalent. Mechanical designers actually go through, do the entire calculations, select the equipment, contact the manufacturer, and specify exact pieces of equipment from specific manufacturer. Just, this is what you're going to put in. Now, to change that, it has to be approved by the...
not to change it, but are you going to show that VAV box in your design model?
Yep.
Okay. because the models I'm used to getting, they don't show that amount of detail. It's just ductwork, exhaust fans or whatnot, well, exhaust diffusers or whatnot. It doesn't go into the equipment. Like the schedule is there in the contract documents, but it's not physically shown in the model. And then putting that for a HVAC contractor to insert that in his model, then you're changing lengths on ductwork or what have you. So that was my only concern. Are you going to show that detail in your model?
The accuracy of the piece of equipment itself, the piece of equipment is more for this is where it is, geometric location, and we have, okay, you have 5-6 inches, but this is where the duct run starts, and this is where you have flex duct from here. That's as much as it'll go, because after that you still have the ceiling installer and all the hangers from the ceiling for the ceiling grid, and you have structural, and you have a whole bunch of other things going on in the plenum that that you put the duct to run here in the plan, in the model, and it ends up over here. And
I guess our goal is to minimize all of that, because essentially I want to include those hangers, whatever is above that plenum, it needs to be shown in the model.
Right, and if you have early involvement from everybody, all the players, you actually, that's why you have clash detection, and you have coordination meetings, so you sidestep a lot of this. And that's why it's also very important to have the subs involved early and bringing their experience in the field into the design process and say, yes, I know we've used those that equipment before. The problem we have is that we have to put a different hanger on it. We can't use the one and that one's actually means that we need 3-4 more inches below it to support it than you have it there. That type of experience is very valuable.
Absolutely.
Early on.
I mean, I think to where you're going with it, though, is that we've got to be clear as designers what our model's good for. We're never going to have everything. We would tell you up front that we're not going to this level of detail. This is where that sub would need to pick up. But don't scrap it and start over, but use what we've got and build from it, as I think is where we would like to see it go. And I think it can go much depending on how it's done and knowing what it's going to be used for. All that stuff is very important for the designer. But yes, I mean, we're not going to have absolutely every single thing, because we can't. We don't have the time to do that, and we don't have the expertise a lot of times, because we aren't the ones fabricating it. So it needs to be a clear picture from both sides, what's there, what they can use, and then take it to the next level of detail. Yeah.
And the other part that's very good about early involvement is when you're making those decisions, the sub person on the field, if they've been part of the conversation early on, they know what the design intent is. So instead of trying on the fly to make a modification to resolve a 6-inch problem, and then they end up causing a 4-foot problem, if they know why that was put there and they understand they can make other considerations, they can have more factors. They can put more factors into the decision.
Yeah, and to your point, this BIM execution plan actually I'll show you the E202 and how it was filled out by attribute, like what the level of detail we're going into with a lot of different things. And it ranges from 100 to 300, depending on what it is, and so everybody knows how far things are getting taken. All right, so I was just going to go through this a little more. Again, this is the execution plan, and again, like we talked about our X-Mind thing, it's from each phase, who's responsible for what. We suggested these 5, I think, and these 5 parties, and I think those are the 5 that they went ahead and plugged in. We have a commissioning agent because that's what we always do for these types of projects, partly because also we have require lead goals on these projects. But even so, I mean, we require a commissioning agent on all capital projects. So, and yeah, right here, we don't have the construction phase broken up between any phases yet in terms of what when we might deliver updated plans, execution plans. So, all right. And then here are the milestones filled out. And like I mentioned, this is all just from the template. I don't think anything was changed here. And then the model managers are listed. I'm not sure if this guy was in the meeting last time. Okay, you said it was women. Okay. So, yeah. Then these are the models that each party is planning on doing. We got a lab furnishings consultant. So that's something new. I think that wasn't in the template that's added in. There's an energy model that both Newcomb and Boyd and the energy model, I guess, they're gonna do.
And that's, you say, one model, it could be several models,
Yeah.
actual models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then we just ask them to define their file naming. Essentially, we give them the project number that we want, that we have, and then each trait, has their abbreviation.
So that's interesting. So what happens if you have two architects or two engineers or two?
We actually have two architects. Cooper Carey, I forgot to mention, Lake Plato is the design architect. And so they have in-house their system of, because I think it's, one model that they're sharing, that they're checking out work stuff between the two. And they set up, I think, their own network where they're sharing everything. So by the time the model gets up, it's just one architectural model. We don't really know who created what and everything,
But you want your project number at the end as opposed to everyone else's.
What's that?
You want your project number at the end as opposed to everyone else.
And there was some debate about that. But yes, that is our project number. And they may name it whatever they want while they're working on it, but when it gets turned over to us, that's what it is. I think. Well, actually, we kind of tell them that that's what it should be during the process, but that is our project number, so the two architects just share that.
That's what I've seen
In all our
projects.
we handle our
own models,
and when we upload,
we just
clean it up, rename
it, and upload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing I noticed, what we put on ours, very specific about is what version of Revit the file is made in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very critical.
That is.
And we even put before that, like RME or RVP or what it was made in Revit, mechanical, Revit structure, Revit architecture.
You're probably going to have to commit that step from now on, because it's just Revit now.
Going forward? Yeah.
But the format.
Oh no, but
version.
But usually that gets established before you start.
Yeah, but for him, I mean, 5 years from now, he would want to know that it was done in 2011 or 2012.
Very true.
Very true.
Yeah.
You might not be able to upgrade it. You might not be able to open it if you don't keep it. If you don't keep upgrading every couple of years. You did it in 2009 and try and upgrade it in 2015.
Really?
Really?
You gotta go step by step.
Well,
You'd actually have to
skip
go.
a couple, but you can't skip very many.
Yeah.
You can go like
2009 and maybe 2011.
Yeah.
But you can't go from, like you said, you can't go from 9 to 12 or 13 because it'll kill it.
If there's too much
If there's too much
difference in the way
because they've changed a lot of the stuff within the coding, from what I understand,
Yeah, they changed
that
stuff.
subtle stuff that you don't see, but that Revit itself as a software sees and will cause lots of problems. Because it also, I mean, it's also good for corrections too, because I've had 2008 and 2009 models that have a corrupted element in it, and I can't do anything with the model. I upgrade it, and in the upgrading process, it actually finds that error, says, hey, look, this is going to be a problem. We're going to go ahead and delete it for you, and everything works fine from then on. I just have to go back and replace that component. Fortunately, in the beginning, I was able to identify, okay, this component is screwed up. It won't let me delete it. I can't do anything with it because the file keeps crashing or whatever. I'll upgrade it, and Revit will automatically get rid of that component for me, and then I'll just put a nice, clean, functioning one back in. But yeah, because of those little subtleties that happen behind the scenes, yeah, you can't do a major change like I guess 3 year past the original file.
A good point.
Come up with that plan now.
So yeah, I always try to
start moving the archives forward.
Yeah.
Live.
Either that or keep an old copy of 2009 or whatever older, in case you need to open it for any reason, and then. But I mean, and for most part, for people like us who are constantly upgrading, okay, we're keeping up with that. It's not that big of a deal. But sometimes you'll have smaller design firms that don't do that. They had 2009, and then guess what? 3 years later, hey, we're going to decide to go ahead and upgrade because we got a big project, and we've got the money to pay for it. Now we'll go ahead and skip 3 years.
No, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to set up a VM on the server with a different installation.
Yep, that's a good option. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess
bring stuff up instead of converting all the archives because I want to do that.
Yeah, that would take forever.
As needed,
Right.
just do a 2, 3, 4 step.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
to do it.
But that's why we put the name in the title of all of our files, because then you wouldn't want to upgrade if you don't have to. You fix it a lot of times. And then you have to save it back and upgrade all of them, because if there's links that are temporarily upgraded, it's a mess.
We do that with ours. The ones that we work in the office version 2011, 2012.
So on this, there's been a lot of questions. I remember in the first meeting about the construction model, and it even says it here, Navisworks, and it says Revit to be determined. Because I think there was a misconception on the part of Georgia Tech at first that it could be just one model. Like the architect lets the contractor hold the model, they do stuff, and they bring it back, and it's all Revit. And then somebody said, wait, we use Navisworks, come on, and then realized you can't really convert a Navisworks to Revit and vice versa. So there's always going to be concurrent models, the design intent model and the construction model. But I think where it said TBD is maybe because of that ad service, where then that information gets put back into the Revit model. So I don't know exactly how that process will work, but I think the powers that be already kind of talk to Cooper and they've got that ad service to do that.
What's okay? Because it depends on which one are you going to use for FM.
Actually, only FM is just.
Which one are you going to use?
Data, just the raw
right.
data.
No. Which one are you going to use for data extraction to be put into FM? The Navisworks one or the Revit?
The Navisworks one.
Right now,
so what would be the point? So the point of putting everything back into the Revit model is for you
yes, it's the geometry. It's the, if the ductwork layout's changed or,
or you have renovation to the building.
For the
exactly.
So the Revit, the updated as-built Revit model for you is just for legacy or for future
use, at least until proper facility management integration ever happens. Because if that were to happen, let's say 2-3 years down the line, somebody actually comes up with really good software that integrates fully. Well, then they've already got the model. They just let's plug it in, let's use it. But yeah, more than likely, it's like what you said.
I was just trying to determine why go through that. And okay, in this case, who's the entity updating the design model?
Well, that was Cooper Carey there.
Cooper Carey, are they the MEP engineers?
And the MEP engineers for them, yeah. Newcomb and Boyd. Yeah, they're part of the
of the team that will update the model.
So, and is that a separate line item on the fee?
Yeah, separate. And in fact, that was something that wasn't thought of in the original, and then when we talked about it, kicking this off, we agreed to an ad service for them to do that. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. All right.
So I think there was a line here, items that will not be considered accurate for dimensioning or placement, and that was all to be determined. We don't know what's kind of excluded that don't use this. I'm not really sure when that will be really updated. There's, so back here, sorry, the way it's cut off, it's like I keep having to go back and forth between the pages, but the one wrinkle to this project is that it's a GSFIC project, and they have their own BIM standards, and they conflict a little bit or go above and beyond. It's not exactly what Georgia Tech requires. So they had to, the design and construction team had to bring in like all these exclusions saying per GSFIC, you know, what they won't be able to meet in the GSFIC standard. And I think GSFIC agreed to these. Because there were some things that they just were kind of asking for that were a little, I'm not exactly sure, stuff that was kind of onerous to do. Has anyone worked with the GSFIC and their BIM guidelines? Yeah. It's a little bit out there, isn't it?
I have a copy of it, and on the surface it doesn't seem all that bad, but yeah, once you get into the details of it, there's a lot of stuff that you would not typically include in a 300 level model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way they say it is that they have a, I forgot what they called it, a BIM lab or something like that, where they open up models and they do as part of their reviews now, they do a constructability review going into the model. So they have a couple of people that, you know, are BIM, you know, Revit savvy. They know how to open the model, go through things, and they do it all in there. And so they want to see things modeled a certain way and things shown, which doesn't necessarily work well with the way teams work. So, and I think they even, and I think Georgia Tech convinced them that some of those requirements now, we don't need to go that far. I think like one of these exterior wall sections, apparently in the wall, if there was some, like maybe they had to show the flashing or something in the model. It's like, no, that's crazy. You could just do that in a 2D, in a drafting view or whatever. And so that's what they were kind of describing, that, hey, that's going to be detailed in the BIM file, but not exactly in the model itself. So stuff like that. And then they filled this out. I think a lot of it was just turning the red text. They agreed with the basic outlines that we had provided, and they just filled that in. And then again, analysis plan. And then this is what type of analysis is going to be performed with the models and what models will be performed on in the phases. Right now, we don't know the construction capture schedule. Then we have an FTP file, and you just name, you know, what. Oh, you don't need to see the password. Don't worry, it's in the recording. We can just pause it. Well, and this is exactly, and this is funny. I can blur that out. I can blur that out. So I asked my supervisor, I was like, you know, is there anything confidential, like, you know, and he's like, no, this is public record or a state agency or whatever. So I was like, okay, yeah, because there's a password there, you know. No, it's all right. And then literally, you know, schedule by calendar, you know, when there'll be model postings to this server. And then here, then we listed the supplementary documents. And then that, I'll just show you real quick. Okay, that's it for that. It's the, oh, sorry. Yeah, the E202, and then a responsibility matrix. So here's the E202. So Cooper Carey is the architect of record, even though I have mentioned Lake Plato as the design architect. So this is between us, McCarthy, Cooper Carey. And this isn't really a contract, right? We don't use AIA contracts and state agencies, so this is really just for reference, a standard that's being used. It does say Revit 2011 here, but it would be nice to have it in that document so you can see it. You don't have to go out to another document that says it. But even within 2011, what version it's in as well, I know there are different updates, 11.1, because my understanding is all parties that are working on a model have to be that same.
Yeah. Used to be up until 12, though.
Yeah.
Okay. They
Because
fixed that?
If somebody worked in a newer build, saved it, somebody else was working with an non-updated version, it would corrupt the file, but my understanding with the recommendation of the training center is that that's not necessary anymore. That's not a big issue anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. I've seen plenty of issues previous to that where, like I said, it would get corrupted and whatnot, but lately I haven't really seen it.
Yeah. When I was at Cooper Carey, I learned Revit, and we were in 09 and upgraded to 2010, and that kind of stuff was, we talked about that a lot, I remember, with our consultants and stuff like that. Okay. Some of the things that were filled out in here. What is the matrix? Here it is. This is where, I think this is using the unit format and all the different parts and pieces of the building, and you can see a lot of it's just level 100 on the part, during going through the phases, preliminary, schematic, DD, CD, and construction, but then it goes up to 400 at the end on most of it, if it's that one.
So then you do have subs on board if you're going up to 400. Who's taking it to 400?
Yeah, I remember at the table, even though the subs weren't there, McCarthy talked about talking to them. I think they might have just coordinated on their own, or I know they had other meetings where I wasn't there, so they might have done that. But yeah, that's one that they kept going back and forth because it's not really an IPD, really. I mean, we hired the architect, and then we hired the construction manager to see him at risk. But they've been talking and coordinating and collaborating as if they were really the IPD. So it's been a learning curve for everybody. But I think for now everything's kind of on track. So we'll see. I'd love to be able to talk in 2 years about how awesome this process was, and there were no hang-ups, it was perfect. It was exactly the way we thought it was. So, but I don't know. We'll see. That remains to be seen. So yeah, I think the other file I had is probably not very earth-shattering, but I think it just went a little bit more into the responsibilities of each firm during the phases. And there were I remember there were some questions for Georgia Tech. So again, it is a living document. If they don't know something, they'll just ask it in this document. So that's it. Are there any other questions or observations on all that? Thank you very much. All right. Thanks.
All right. I guess from here we will move on to the website.
Actually, I have a question you may or may not be able to answer. How does this document dovetail into your contract exactly? Is there a clause in your contract with each individual party?
I would say yes, but I don't know that answer. But yeah, as far as I know, it's definitely built into each in the contract. I'm sure there has to be, since we have separate contracts with the design team and the construction team, that we have to reference it separately. Yeah.
That's why we're having trouble with right now. Because it has to be everybody's contract has to be written exactly the same. So when you're negotiating contracts, nobody negotiating contracts exactly the same. So it's tough to kind of get everybody to talk about the exact same.
That's true.